So for example, let's take a look at, let's go back to the diastolic blood pressure in the Framingham Heart Study at visit 1. And we get that the mean is 84.09 and the standard deviation is 12.97. So what the empirical rule says, if we can assume that the diastolic blood pressure is unimodal and approximately symmetric. Remember, we looked at this issue about the diastolic blood pressure to see whether it was symmetric or not. We'll come back to that in a minute. But if we could assume that, then if we look at the mean plus or minus 1 standard deviation, we get this interval from 71.11 to 97.07. So I took this number here, 84, subtracted 12 and got 71, added 12.97 and I got 97. So here's the interval from 71 roughly to 97, and that should have 2/3 of the observations. If I do mean plus or minus 2 standard deviations, then it goes to 54, from 54.15, let's say, to 110.04. So this interval here, mean plus or minus 2 standard deviation, should approximately encompass 95% of the data. And mean plus or minus 3 standard deviations, this should be almost all the data. Now, this one we can check, because this one we get from the summary that the min is 50, so we're down here at 45, so we're covered there. But the max is 142, so this is a little bit less than the max. So it's not going to be all the observations, but let's see how much of the observations. So here is what the empirical rule says. We should have 67% with the first interval and 95% with the second and all with the third. What actually happens? What happens when we look at our data and see how many of the data of the 4,434 observations fall inside this interval? And the answer is the actual number, wait for it, is 71%. So the rule said 67%. What actually happened is 71%. Pretty close. The rule says 95%, and what actually happened is 95.99%. I didn't want to call that 96% because 95 sounds closer to 95 than 96, but no, I'm only kidding. So it's 95.99%, so it's pretty close. And plus or minus 3 standard deviation actually covers 98.89%. So here is an example of what the rule says should happen and what actually happened.